According to a survey, over 2/3 of Americans are planning to travel this summer. All this summer travel means that airlines, hotels, restaurants, bars, retail stores, and more have been ramping up their hiring. So where do growing companies like these go to build their teams? ZipRecruiter. And right now, my listeners can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/Kellerman. When you post a job on ZipRecruiter, they send your job to over 100 top job sites, giving you access to their network of millions of job seekers. You can easily review recommended candidates and invite your top choices to apply for your job, which encourages them to apply faster. According to ZipRecruiter internal data, jobs where employers invite candidates to apply get 2.5 times more candidates. ZipRecruiter's technology is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/Kellerman. That's ziprecruiter.com/KELLERMAN. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
The Max Kellerman Show, the podcast.
Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming on ESPN Plus. Also available on Sirius XM Channel 80. I'm Courtney Cronin, joined alongside my good friend Joe Fortenbaugh, sitting in for Max Kellerman. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. That's the number to join the show and join in the conversation. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join us via the Goodyear hotline. Joe, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. A 35-0 shutout for the New England Patriots. Cam Newton and Mac Jones, strong showing in the Patriots' preseason win, which capped off what Bill Belichick described as a good week. Finally felt like Cam Newton, Joe, was able to take a little bit more of a stronghold on the grip of the Patriots quarterback competition. He looked good in the start, 8 of 9, 103 yards, finished with one touchdown, no interception. He played 3 series before Mac Jones, the rookie, then took over. Jones, first-round pick from Alabama, was also quite productive in this outing. 13 for 19, 146 yards over 4 series. He had no touchdowns and no interceptions. So all week long we were talking about how is this quarterback competition going to go in New England? Who's going to separate themselves? How are they going to look now that they actually get to see some competition during the week in practice with those joints against Philadelphia? I was reading earlier in the week just about how those practices went, and that it was Jalen Hurts, of all people, who was standing apart of all of the quarterbacks that we saw in Philadelphia. But now with Cam Newton and Mac Jones, this makes this one of the more interesting quarterback battles of the preseason, because you have an incumbent in Cam Newton who has played a lot more seasons of professional football than his counterpart, Mac Jones. And it always feels like Bill Belichick's going to give him this final shot to prove himself. And so far, it looks like he's off to a pretty good start with that.
No doubt. If you are a fan of the New England Patriots, if you work for the New England Patriots, you have to be happy with what you saw last night, because it wasn't just Newton looking razor sharp. Mac Jones looked efficient as well. I like the fact that they threw him into that game backed up against the goal line after the Eagles blew it on 4th down, and then he came in, Mac Jones that is, to lead a 9-minute drive that ended in a score for the Patriots. He looked like the game was moving at a pace in which he could handle. But the job belongs to Newton. The job should belong to Newton, and Newton should be the starter in Week 1, barring an injury. Let him make the decision. And by him, I mean Cam Newton. Newton's going to do one of 2 things if he's starting this year in Week 1. He's either going to play well, and then you're going to continue to ride with him, which is a very good scenario, or he's going to play poorly, and you're going to turn it over to the backup, the kid, Mac Jones. And at that point, you're not going to have any controversy whatsoever, because the evidence is going to have played out in front of the entire world, so that you're not going to have to justify it. That means no locker room controversy, no controversy in the media, no problems to worry about. Let Newton make the determination as to who's going to start with his play, and one way or another, you're going to get a drama-free decision. And ultimately, when it comes to these quarterback battles, that's one of the key elements. You want to avoid any sort of drama that can leak into the clubhouse, divide the locker room, Courtney, and put you in a situation where you're focused on anything but the task at hand that coming Sunday.
Yeah, this seems like a perfect scenario, the way that this quarterback battle, if you want to call it that. I always assume battle kind of has some sort of negative undertones to it. When we're seeing Cam and Mac, which Sarah Spain Spain and Fitz actually pointed this out to me because my brain couldn't comprehend that their names are each other's names except spelled backwards the other day. That puts into, like, when I was thinking about that, I'm like, wow, these guys actually seem like they're rooting for each other out there. Like, when you're looking at the on-field body language and chemistry and seeing what or reading what you're hearing about in practice, that when Cam has a good series with the offense, it's Mac Jones that's out there pumping him up and vice versa. There's no toxicity with this. I sometimes feel like with these quarterback battles that we see in the preseason that there's always kind of the one-uppingness that happens. And if you are the New England Patriots, if you're Bill Belichick, who wants to give Cam Newton every single opportunity here to be able to continue this resurrecting of his career after he signed with the Patriots as a free agent in the 2020 offseason, you want to slow play this. Like, they didn't draft Mac Jones 15th overall, or rather have him fall into their lap 15th overall, for him to have to be thrown into the fire right away when you have more than a capable guy in Cam Newton who can run your offense. And when you think about that, Joe, with how many players that they had opt out on defense last year and just what this defense is going to look like in 2021, I think it changes the entire conversation of how ready you need to get Mac Jones in order to play and just how soon that's going to be. Because if this defense looks like what it has been in previous years and you're getting good to capable to maybe even great quarterback play, I mean, there's a broad spectrum there with Cam Newton, you should be in a really good spot, I think, to be able to take this as long as you want to go before you feel comfortable turning the reins over to Mac Jones at some point.
And if you look at this team now, Courtney, they're built to contend this season. I'm not going to say win a Super Bowl this season, but this is not a complete rebuild like we're seeing in Jacksonville or like we saw in Cleveland 3 years ago. This is a team that's built to contend now. And the last thing you want to do is put a wet behind his ears rookie out on the field who's not ready to go, who could jeopardize you in some of these early games. They're going to have a big date with the Saints in week 3 in which New Orleans comes to town. That is a winnable game. Winnable game. Vegas is calling that point spread New England -1, and depending on how Winston or Taysom Hill is going to play, you're going to have a chance to win that game. But you can't let those slip away early when you're in a division with Miami, who should contend, and Buffalo, who should contend at a very high level. So that's one of the reasons you want to ride with the steady hand of Newton. But these two, Newton and Jones, are going to be great for one another. For Jones, you get the opportunity to learn from a guy who's won an MVP, played in a Super Bowl, and done it at the highest possible level. A lot of people don't like Cam Newton, but that's their problem. Cam Newton is a pro. He knows how to do the job, and he's been doing it at a very high level for a long time. Jones can learn from watching that. On the flip side, when was the last time Newton was truly pushed? Right? We go back to his last year at Auburn. He was fantastic. He came out and got the job very quickly in Carolina. He went on to be a superstar at a very young age. He hasn't been pushed in a long time. This here, for the second act of his career, is going to push him to be at his absolute best because he knows there's a first-round pick breathing down his neck. These two are going to be great for one another.
It's the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming on ESPN+. It was important for the New England offense to start out quickly, according to quarterback Cam Newton. Here's what he had to say about that fast start on Thursday evening.
Yeah, that's one of our keys to win each and every week is, start fast. And, given any type of opportunity, we had pretty much good field position. And we just had to uphold our end of the bargain. Coach challenged us, in the passing game just to be more efficient. And that's what we just tried to do, throw and catch, have good discipline in the zone defenses and the man-to-man defenses, whatever they threw at us. And that's all we just tried to do.
When he's talking about that efficiency, Joe, it's Joe Fortenbaugh and Courtney Cronin sitting in for Max Kellerman on this Friday afternoon. I think of Mac Jones in this one series. That was his first drive on Thursday night. It was a 17-play series, which took like 10 minutes off the clock. But I think back to what the scouting report was on him coming out of college and the fact that he was kind of dubbed this game manager, right? He had a million superstars on defense, and he had some pretty good weapons on offense, including Devontae Smith, who was on the other sideline yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles. But all that we've seen from him in training camp practices and now in these preseason games is that maybe it's not the fact that he doesn't need to be surrounded by this sort of outrageous talent in order for him to succeed. And I bring up that first drive from the game last night. 17 plays, 91 yards, 9 minutes and 4 seconds, and he went down to the end zone. I mean, that to me is something as a coach. You're looking at him saying, okay, this is somebody who has a command of what we are asking him to do. And the most important play that came out of that series was that 3rd and 13 from his own 6-yard line when he hit N'Keal Harry for 17 yards. That's arm strength, and there was another play, actually, that I think demonstrated what that was, his arm strength, much better than that specific one. But I'm seeing something in Mac Jones that kind of feels like this evolution, this early process for him of how good he can be in not needing everything perfect effectively around him.
Think about the advantages Jones and the Patriots have prior to this union forming a few months ago at the draft, right? Jones is coming to New England, where his head coach at Alabama is very close friends with Bill Belichick, all right? So if you're Belichick and the Patriots, you're getting the ultimate scouting report on Mac Jones. It's not as if Saban is going to sugarcoat anything or give you a negative review. He's going to tell you the truth. And if Belichick's comfortable with what he's hearing, he knows what he's working with. For Jones, he's going to get the briefing from Saban going into this. This is what Bill's going to expect of you. This is what they like to do on offense, and he's going to be able to hit the ground running. It's a great relationship for each individual. But this year, while all the talk is going to be about the quarterback battle, the success in New England is going to come on the other side of the ball. You're not going to need a 400-yard passer each week. You're not going to need Patrick Mahomes out there every single Sunday in order to win. It would be nice. This New England defense is going to welcome back Dante Hightower, who opted out last year. They went and signed Matthew Judon from the Baltimore Ravens. Kyle Van Noy is coming back from Miami. He knows the system. Devin McCourty and Stephon Gilmore in the secondary, and you bring in Jalen Mills for depth as well. This is a very good defense. And last year, while everyone wrote the Patriots off, they finished the season 7th in scoring defense, giving up just 22 points per game. As they upgrade that unit, offensively, they're going to need to be able to run the ball and protect the ball. And if they do that, they're going to find themselves with a chance to win a lot of football games this season.
Much more Patriots talk to get into later in the show. That was Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. No contract, no compromise. Let's head out now to the Goodyear Hotline, where we will tap in with Drew Pearson, Cowboys Hall of Fame wide receiver. Drew, I just got to start out. What took so long to get you into the Hall, and congratulations.
Well, thank you for the congrats. And if I had an answer to what took so long, I would have solved that problem a long time ago. But it's just part of the process. It's a tough process to go through. You have to be patient with the process. While you're going through the process, you can't criticize it, because if you do, you're criticizing the Hall of Fame. If you criticize the Hall of Fame, you're criticizing those great players that are in the Hall of Fame. So you just be patient and deal with it and hope that your name will be called one day, and mine was. And I feel blessed that it. The thing about it is I feel blessed more than anything that I'm able to understand it, appreciate it, accept it, do an acceptance speech, and know what it all means. And you know, at my age, sometimes, you know, that's, you know, doesn't work out that way. So for me, it did. So I'm blessed in that regard as well.
Well, congratulations, a well-deserved honor getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's talk about your Cowboys. Mike McCarthy said this week that he doesn't really look likely at this point, just given Dak Prescott's shoulder injury, that we're going to see him at all or much at all in the preseason. Now, there's a lot of debate about quarterbacks and your starters needing to play in preseason games, the use of it, what have you. But now he's dealing not only with the ankle injury, but he's got that shoulder injury. And my question is, it feels like if you don't throw him out there, at least for a series or two at some point during this preseason, that you're risking him really not being able to get into a rhythm come week 1. Do you see it the same way? Because I know we're trying to preserve his health here, but I'm also concerned about that rust factor.
Yeah, good call, because I see it exactly the same way. And I would want, if I'm Dak, I would want some game action. I would want to know how much pressure I can put on my leg, what situation my arm might be in at this point. Can I make the throws and things like that? And you need to find those things out in the preseason game. I don't want him to play a lot, But, start the game, play a couple series, get back in rhythm. He hadn't played in such a long time. And what that'll do, I think it'll give Dak some confidence that, he's ready to go. As far as his arm's concerned, I was at the facility not too long, earlier this week watching practice, and, he didn't throw any serious passes, meaning anything hard or downfield to receivers or anything like that. But he was throwing the football. And he must have thrown about 50 or so passes warming up and throwing on the sideline to receivers and stuff like that. And I didn't see anything wrong with his throwing motion, no hesitations, no difference in his throwing motion than before the arm or soldier injury. So I think he's going to be okay. But I'm with you. I would want some game action. I would want to know if I'm ready to go, not to find out on game day on NFL Sunday. Or whenever they play their first game, and get between the sidelines of the lines of an NFL football game and find out then if you can take it or not. I would like to know ahead of time.
Drew, last season, if the quarterback didn't play big for the Cowboys, they were going to have an awfully tough time winning. The defense ranked 5th worst in scoring defense last year. The offensive line battled injuries. Ezekiel Elliott, he admitted he wasn't in the best shape of his career. How much is Dak going to need to do this season for the Cowboys in order for them to win? Have they built well enough around him to give him help so that he doesn't have to be Superman each and every week?
Yeah, that's the strength of this football team, the offense. And all we need is for Dak to be healthy and play like he was playing before he got hurt. We're better off this season because the injury situation, simply in the offensive line. Tyron Smith, he played about 4 games last year at left tackle. Zach Martin missed a bunch of games. There were other injuries in the offensive line. Lyle Collins missed games. So all those guys are healthy now. And Zeke, he had a down year for Zeke, and he's recommitted himself. And that should, bode well with the running game. And then you look at the receiving corps. I mean, we got one of the best receiving corps in the National Football League. You look at the top 3 with Gallup and Amari Cooper, and then, of course, the new number 88, C.D. Lamb. But you've got guys like Noah Brown and Cedric Wilson that can come off the bench and contribute. So they got a lot of weapons on offense. The question is the defense going to be ready? Did we make the right moves defensively, including bringing in a new defensive coordinator? I hope with Dan Quinn, what he does, that does not make the same mistake as Mike Nolan. Mike Nolan came in and he wanted the players to fit his system, and that players didn't fit his system. Instead of forcing that and adjusting his system to fit the players, he forced the players to play his system, and it didn't work. So hopefully Dan Quinn won't make that mistake. I know he comes in with a philosophy, but hopefully he will do what's best for the talent that he has on the defensive side of the football. And hopefully we upgraded on the defensive side, and most of that upgrade came through the draft.
Drew Pearson, Dallas Cowboys Hall of Fame wide receiver, joins us here on the Max Kellerman Show via the Goodyear Hotline. Drew, when you talk about the changes that they've made on the defensive side of the ball, and we've seen a little bit of it play out on Hard Knocks, right, with Dan Quinn, and it seems like players are really buying in to the former Atlanta Falcons head coach and kind of that juice that he's bringing to this side of the ball. And it's fun getting to see, the likes of Micah Parsons and some of the young guys that they've brought in to be able to kind of turn things around with this unit. Where do you think the biggest need for improvement is within this side of the ball?
The defensive side, I think it had to be in the linebacker play. I think we dropped off considerably from what we expect our linebackers to play at the level of NFL football. Missing tackles, not good in pass coverage, can't run anybody down and things like that. So hopefully injuries played a part in that. That's why they're getting those types of performances. And hopefully now they're healthy and things will change. And then again, hopefully Dan Quinn will put those guys in a position to be successful. But, you have to have good linebacker play. You have to have good defensive line play. You have to keep those offensive linemen off those linebackers so that they can make plays. So it has to be all coordinated together. And hopefully going through the off season and not having to deal with COVID like they had to deal with last year, bringing in a new coordinator. The guys should be rejuvenated because everybody's competing. Everybody has to be accountable to someone different and prove themselves to someone different, and that's Dan Quinn. And so hopefully that will be the motivation. The thing hopefully they upgraded more than anything is the desire to want to go out there and play and hit and make some plays defensively. So I think that was a big problem as well last season.
Drew, just to put a bow on this, Hall of Fame weekend, as great as that was, there were so many big names with you that were going into Canton, from Peyton Manning to Troy Polamalu. What did you enjoy the most taking all of that in?
Well, actually, just going in with that class, we did a lot of things that were so enjoyable. I enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, everything they asked me to do or wanted me to do, I enjoyed it, whether it was the parade, the round table discussions, the Hall of Fame luncheons, the picture taking, the gold jacket dinner, whatever it was all exciting and great to be part of. But the best part is the class that I'm going in with. You mentioned some of those guys like Manning and Woodson and Calvin Johnson and John Lynch and, just the quality, the character, the integrity of the class, the athletic greatness of the class. And Mr. Baker, the CEO, president, and head of the Pro Football Hall of Fame committee and Pro Football Hall of Fame, he won't admit it, but he did say it is one of the best classes ever inducted at one time into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I'm really proud of that. And the thing about it is I'm going in with 3 first ballot guys, and when we got together, the excitement was the same. They were happy as I was going in 38 years later, and I was happy as they were going in 5 years of their wait time. So it doesn't matter when you get in, how you get in, as long as you get in. And if you go in with a great class that I'm going in with, it's going to be memorable. That's for sure.
I always say this, the one good thing that we had that came out of COVID was that we got not 1 but 2 classes going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2021. Yeah. Drew Pearson played 11 seasons for the Dallas Cowboys and now has a gold jacket of his own. Thanks so much, Drew. Really appreciate the time.
You got it. Thanks for the conversation. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save big when you bundle your auto, home, motorcycle, RV, or boat. Visit Progressive.com today. Coming up next, we saw some good debuts from rookie quarterbacks during preseason week 1. What do we expect for week 2? We'll get into that next. The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming on ESPN+.
According to a survey, over 2/3 of Americans are planning to travel this summer. All this summer travel means that airlines, hotels, restaurants, bars, retail stores, and more have been ramping up their hiring. So where do growing companies like these go to build their teams? ZipRecruiter. And right now, my listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Kellerman. When you post a job on ZipRecruiter, they send your job to over 100 top job sites, giving you access to their network of millions of job seekers. You can easily review recommended candidates and invite your top choices to apply for your job, which encourages them to apply faster. According to ZipRecruiter internal data, jobs where employers invite candidates to apply get 2.5 times more candidates. ZipRecruiter's technology is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/Kellerman. That's ZipRecruiter.com/KELLERMAN. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Ready for a new ride, but not sure where to start? Meet the tool that makes car shopping and financing easier. With Capital One Auto Navigator, you can find a car and get pre-qualified instantly. You'll get your real rate and monthly payment without even impacting your credit score. It's so simple, you might feel like you're taking the easy way out. That's because you are. Capital One. What's in your wallet? Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/Auto Navigator.
The Max Kellerman Show, the podcast.
4 seasons as the Bears quarterback, and now he is with the Buffalo Bills. Mitchell Trubisky making his return to Chicago this weekend for some preseason action where he's going to be starting under center for Buffalo. It's the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming on the ESPN app. He's Joe Fortenbaugh. I am Courtney Cronin. We are sitting in for Max. Want to join the conversation? 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. We're streaming on ESPN Plus. You can also catch us on the app and on Sirius XM Channel 80. So last week was really fun. We dubbed all of the new rookie quarterbacks, Joe, as a potential Hall of Famer someday. At least that's what it kind of felt like with the conversation around Justin Fields and his performance in the preseason opener against Miami. He had an awesome week in the preseason joint practices with the Dolphins, and then translated that to the game last Saturday in the win for Chicago Fields, 14-20, 142 yards and a touchdown. We also saw a little bit of Andy Dalton, but not that much. 2 for 4, 18 yards total, finished with a 62.5 quarterback rating. It's the preseason, things like that don't truly matter, but when we're talking about the overall notion of a quarterback competition in Chicago and the fact that Matt Nagy may or may not have to change his mind about who he's going to be starting at quarterback, that's something that's not in the mind of Andy Dalton, who had this to say about where he stands and where Justin Fields stands in the overall conversation. Take a listen.
There's so much excitement with Justin, and it's deservedly so. He's a first-round pick, and do I want the fans behind me and this team and all that kind of stuff? Yes. Do I want them behind Justin? Absolutely, I do. That's not my focus. I can't focus on all that right now. Like I've said before, Justin's going to have his time, and Justin's going to have a great career. But right now, it's my time.
I think you can't answer that in any better way than Andy Dalton did. And here's what I mean by that, because quarterbacks probably have the weirdest job as far as you need to train the guy who's going to replace you, and you need to do it with a smile and be a great teammate all at once. That's kind of the notion that's always thrown out there when guys are brought in effectively as the understudy, Joe, and then it's only a matter of time before they replace you. But we've seen such limited action from Andy Dalton in the first preseason game, and I do imagine we will see quite a bit more of him tomorrow on Saturday when they play Buffalo in Chicago. But at this rate, I don't know if I'm ready to completely buy into Justin Fields and in the thought that maybe there needs to be a switch in mindset of what they're going to do week one. To me, Dalton is still the guy. What do you think?
Dalton's the guy in week one for one reason and one reason only: the opponent. It's a Sunday night football game in Los Angeles against Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and the Rams, and the Bears find themselves as a 7-point underdog. Andy Dalton's job is to go out there, take that beating so Justin Fields doesn't have to, and then in week 2 when the Bears come home to host the Cincinnati Bengals, which is a very soft landing spot considering it's a home game against a below-average defense, that is when you debut Justin Fields. The fans will be ready, the team will be ready, and you know what? Whether Fields is ready or not, he's going to have to get in there at some time. You can take your time with Mac Jones because of Cam Newton. You're not going to be able to take your time with Justin Fields because Matt Nagy, the head coach, and Ryan Pace, the general manager, are on the hottest seat in football. They should have been gone after last year, but they found a way to stick around because of a late surge that got them into the playoffs. Talk to almost any Bears fan out there. They didn't even want to go to the postseason because they wanted their GM and head coach out, but they're back. So they made the move to bring in a quarterback and buy themselves more time. Don't start Fields in week 1 to take that beating. You're likely going to lose to the Rams anyway. Put him in there in week 2 and then get that era started because the expectations continue to rise. Doesn't matter if it was the B squad or the C squad against Miami last week, Courtney. Fields look good, especially with his legs. 5 carries, 33 yards, and a touchdown. The people are excited, and that landing spot in week 2 against Cincinnati is as soft as they come.
Yeah, the soundbite that's been making the rounds this week was what Justin Fields had to say about the speed of the game. And, of course, my retort, and just about everybody else's, well, will you be saying the same thing about this? How the speed of the game is so manageable when you have Aaron Donald barreling down on you, trying to eat you alive in week 1? So, of course, when you're talking about Andy Dalton and the need to continue to ease Justin Fields in, I think that you're right. Wait until you get a more manageable opponent and wait in order to make the switch. But once you make that switch, you have to be sure that, I don't know, week 2 might even be too early. I think you get through the first quarter of the season before cutting it loose, but it's also going to depend on what their record stands at that point of the season. It's the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming on ESPN Plus. Courtney Cronin, Joe Fortenbaugh sitting in for Max. Now, we'll obviously be getting into Fields and Dalton throughout the next couple days. We'll look at that performance or those performances under a microscope. But I do want to talk about Mitchell Trubisky. I teased it at the top of the segment. I think Tariq Cohen, I loved his tweet today. I don't know if you ended up seeing it. He said, if you boo Mitch tomorrow, you lame and a weirdo. And he's not really wrong, because I know Bears fans are upset with the way that went, where they got fleeced by the San Francisco 49ers in the 2017 draft when the Bears traded up one spot to get Mitchell Trubisky, and that didn't pan out after 4 seasons in Chicago. I think with Trubisky and what he's primed to do now as the backup for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, there can't be any sort of like hard feelings at this point, right? Like, I'm not the only one who sees it that way. To me, it's over and done with, and Trubisky now has a chance to go resurrect his career after his development. I mean, he was put in a spot that he shouldn't have been put in from the start, and his development didn't really go as planned, and I think you don't necessarily... If you're a Bears fan, you can be upset that it didn't pan out, but now you have something to turn the page to completely.
I think the fans get it. The fans in Chicago aren't idiots, and I think they realize that was just a bad pick. It's not a bad guy, it's a bad pick. It's one thing if you draft a guy high like Jamarcus Russell, right, and he refuses to show up on time, and they have to find him sleeping in his locker, and he's not prepped, and he's lying to the team about studying tape, and he ends up playing pathetic, horrible football. That's one thing. That a fan base should get upset about, because that's not taking it seriously. That's not being a pro. Trubisky did the best he could with what he had. He just wasn't the guy that should have been drafted that high, especially when Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were coming right behind him. Now, Watson has obviously taken a hard left turn with his career and everything that's going on in Houston. But when we were evaluating these guys coming out of college a few years ago, every fan who watched 10 minutes of Clemson football knew Deshaun Watson could play. Anyone who watched Texas Tech football knew Mahomes had talent. To this extent, probably not, but knew he could play. When you watched Trubisky at North Carolina, there were plenty of red flags. Level of competition, level of starts, lack of big-time numbers, but the Bears took a shot and it didn't work. The problem there lies with the Chicago front office and coaching staff for making that decision ultimately. And I think Bears fans are smart enough to know that with Trubisky coming back, he's not the bad guy. He worked as hard as he could. He's a good guy. He showed up. He just couldn't make the plays when they needed him to.
All this rookie quarterback talk surrounding Justin Fields keeps clouding the conversation. I feel that's all we're talking about here on ESPN Radio. But I promise at some point we'll be getting into Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, and the rest of the crew. We already talked about Mac Jones and his pretty good second outing with the New England Patriots. But again, it's preseason football. That's all we're talking about, considering this quarterback class, according to some, could be dubbed as one of the best ever. It's the Max Kellerman Show, brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven. Straight ahead, are we seeing more brawls at training camp this year, or is it just me? But first, what if you could put the same type of rigor that the pro leagues use for their players into your hiring process? Well, you can when you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified candidates for your open roles and proactively presents them to you, and you can invite your top choices to apply for your job. No wonder 4 of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/Kellerman. That's ZipRecruiter.com/KELLERMAN. More coming up next here on the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming on ESPN+.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work. You know it's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Black History Always, the podcast.
Come check out the new Black History Always podcast with me, Clinton Yates. We at The Undefeated are telling stories that remind people who we are as a culture is a living, breathing entity in all parts of American society. It's not just history books and social media, y'all. We contain multitudes, and everyone deserves to be heard. So listen, follow, and let's have a conversation.
Listen or follow Black History Always wherever you get your podcast.
The Max Kellerman Show, the podcast.
listening to the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and streaming live on ESPN Plus. We are also coming to you on Sirius XM Channel 80. Courtney Cronin, Joe Fortenbaugh sitting in for Max. Want to join in the conversation? 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Be sure to tune in to an American League battle on Sunday as the Indians host the Angels, presented by Samsung Galaxy. Coverage of Sunday Night Baseball begins at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, and at 7 p.m. on the TV on ESPN. Okay, meatheads. I don't know if we've seen more of this year, but it kind of feels like it, Joe, where these training camp skirmishes are turning into all-out brawls. We saw one yesterday between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tennessee Titans in their joint practices. There were two in back-to-back days with the Raiders and the Los Angeles Rams on both Wednesday and Thursday. I don't know if it's because we didn't have preseason last year or what, but it kind of feels like these brawls and these, in-practice fighting, because it's really smart to punch a guy with your in the helmet with your hand. Like, usually that leads to a broken hand. I witnessed that here. I cover the Minnesota Vikings for ESPN.com, and I saw that happen 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, wow, that's a really smart thing to do. But it just kind of feels like maybe since we didn't have a preseason last year to kind of get this out of the way, and we were tiptoeing along with the COVID season, that tempers weren't flaring as much because we were just so grateful to be out there. But am I crazy to think that maybe there's some more, football guy meatheadedness coming out this year since we actually have a preseason and these joint practices to watch this stuff happen?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm jealous. I'm honestly jealous because as a born and raised Philadelphia Eagles fan, I'd love to see my team throw some punches, to fight anybody, to do anything other than what I witnessed last night against the New England Patriots, getting squad-ooshed in a preseason game in embarrassing fashion. So, yeah, I'd love to see some fight out of my team, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. I think it feels like that because we got two fights in back-to-back days, so it feels like they're coming one after another. But this is what's going to happen when you're going to take football teams and you're going to put them in these practices against one another, but you don't necessarily know what the rules are or what the unspoken code of conduct is going to be, right? Football itself is inherently violent. But when you're going to get together for a practice during the month of August in the preseason, no one's going to want to get hurt, so you might not be going 100%. But then at the same time, a lot of these guys are trying to make a roster. They have to go 100%. Yeah. So you might have one guy who's going a little too hard, another guy who isn't. It's hot. You're frustrated. You're tired of kind of hitting each other but not being able to lay it all the way in. And then it gets to a point where tension boils over. And then everyone comes running out on the sidelines because it probably buys a few minutes away from going through practice. So it feels like it's been at a more fevered pitch as of late, but I don't know if that's the case. We get a few of these every single year. It's always good for sports talk radio.
Yeah, it's always when you're looking the other direction, trying to cover whatever's happening on this field, and you're out of your right ear. You can start hearing whistles blowing and a lot of foul language and, coaches screaming, get out of there and everything else. It's like, there's so many things to watch when you're trying to evaluate a 90-man roster. And on top of that, you have 180 guys out there if it's a joint practice. But the interesting thing with the Raiders, because the Raiders and the Rams had those two skirmishes on Wednesday and Thursday, apparently these happened during the special teams period, which those are typically your bottom half of the roster guys that are trying to fight for a spot on the 53. And I don't know, maybe that plays into the overall competitive nature of it, that things are going to get chippy when people's jobs are on the line and your way onto the roster might be blocked by somebody else, I don't know, trying to hurt you in that sense. I don't know if I'm reading into that too much, but I just thought it was really interesting that those dust-ups were happening on special teams periods.
I think for the Buccaneers and the Titans, it's going to be big for Tennessee heading into their game when they meet each other this weekend because the Titans had a lousy week of practice, according to Coach Vrabel. And I think he's going to use that as motivation in a game against the Buccaneers team that's not going to play any starters. Bruce Arians alluded to the fact earlier this week that they might not play any of their starters, similar to what we saw in week 1 when Cincinnati came in as a 6-point underdog and beat them outright in that game, I believe by 5 points. So if you're looking for a little action, Tennessee +1 is the type of bet I'd be making in the preseason because I think they're going to give you the better effort. On the other side, with the Rams and with the Raiders, McVay never likes to play his starters, right? He's just looking to navigate the preseason. He doesn't want to take any risk with Matthew Stafford because this is a team with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. He can't take any risk with Darrell Henderson because they lost Cam Akers earlier in the preseason, so they got to protect the running back position. There's a lot on the line there. And as it pertains to the Raiders and John Gruden, I can't believe Gruden signed that contract, has been with the Raiders as long as he has produced as little as he has, and still doesn't find himself in the crosshairs when it comes to individuals talking about coaches on the hot seat. He seems to be the Teflon Don here, escaping any and all criticism. It is fascinating to me.
Well, he certainly is somebody who's going to enter the season on the hot seat if you haven't already put him there already, considering, like you said, the big contract that he signed and what he has not been able to produce so far from Oakland now into Las Vegas. We're going to get back into this later in the show at some point, also recapping some Thursday night football action here on the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN+. Cam and Mac and Cam both had strong showings in the Patriots' preseason win over the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll get into that next. Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio, and streaming on ESPN+.